possibly one of the most important books that have been written is the introduction to history and the really the treatment of history of Ibn Khaldun. So Ibn Khaldun had the book titled Kitab al-Ibar wa Diwan al-Mubtadi' wal-Khabar. It's the long title. It's the history of Ibn Khaldun, which is still as a book is read and engaged with so many different specialization. It is seen as to be the book that has founded the field of anthropology, the field of sociology, even his area of division of labor on economics, theories of state formation and rise and decline of states. And some of your major thinkers today will always, in the list of 10 important books to read, Ibn Khaldun is often offered as a book to read. So his work is really monumental, and I think that as we continue to deal with the complexities of what Muslims are facing, I wanted for us to maybe to elevate our discussions and our understanding to at least see what Ibn Khaldun was engaging with at the time. Importantly, that Ibn Khaldun is actually also is credited of beginning of the scientific method. And he put the scientific method not only in relations to science, but also scientific method in relations to the field of social sciences. So in one of his books, specifically in one of the chapters, he says that history as a field or as an understanding, it's an art that is subject to being examined of having veracity or falsehood. And he says some people will accept the opinion of people because it matches their group, which what we call today is like my group, right or wrong. And as we know, Muslims, we tend to be almost falling into this field where our opinion, because of our group, we accept the opinion without any examination. And he says that this is a faulty understanding, right? He says, فَمِنْهَا التَّشَيُّعَاتُ لِلْآرَاءِ وَالْمَذَاهِبِ. From it is taken the opinions of individuals and particular groups. And I know in that history, we always say, oh, mashallah, the Sunnis are together. At certain points, Hanafis, Malikis, Shafis, Hanbali would not pray behind each other, right? In such a way that we actually reach a level of what you call missing the forest for the tree. Not recognizing that the ultimate goal is for us how to worship Allah rather than trying to prove that Abu Hanifa, Shafi'i, Imam Malik, Ahmad bin Hanbal, and also other scholars, we try to do defense of them rather than defense of the deen overall. So there is this aspect of how we begin to actually undertake this aspect relative to taking the opinions or of sectarian opinions and so on. Second, he points out to us that sometimes because we value someone highly, we begin to actually leave our intellectual capacities and reasonableness to actually ask the question because we assume that the person is of a higher status or magnitude. And he says more so also when we have a relationship with somebody of religious status. Right? So in essence, we begin to almost dispense with our intellect. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always asks us, أَفَلَا يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Don't you contemplate in Allah's creation, but also every matter that is introduced to you. To reflect. This is not a lack of adab, it's just a lack of using. Allah give you responsibility to yourself. He did not ask you to follow my opinion, and I don't want you to follow my opinion, I want you to examine my opinion. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, as soon as he was nominated and took the Khilafah, he said, if I do something right, obey me and follow me. But if I do something wrong, correct me. This is Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Right? Today, in almost the smallest affairs, we say we can't, as if we are doing ta'li or putting a pedestal on individuals, and that's again leads to misunderstandings both on matters of religion and matters of the world. So for example, if somebody asks me about issues, can you resolve issues of marriage divorce? I say I have not done any work on this, so I can't help you. That's not my field. But we assume that just because I'm giving a khutbah, I'm going to give you what you call from A to Z, I am a specialist in that field. Right? I will be practicing psychology, anthropology, sociology, child rearing, and so on. That's just completely wrong. In our history, there is specialization. And you go to specialists. That's why we know Imam al-Bukhari, he had many different fields, but he's understood to be a specialist in hadith. Right? And same other scholars. So we need to make sure that we ask the person appropriate question to their appropriate specialization. Right? You don't go to somebody, let's say, who's a dentist, right, to say, can you work on my toe? If you're confused about which one is which, that's your problem, not the dentist's problem or the person who's going to work on your toe. So in matters of specialization, to understand this. Third, Ibn Khaldun says that it is the nature of human being to begin to take on fantastical news and begin to convey it. Fantastical news, because again, we have in our mind sometimes, again, in relations to the unseen world, that we get into this fantastical world. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala differentiates between Islam, right, which is something you practice, prayer, you see me pray, right, fasting, again, unless you go, the assumption is that you're fasting. Hajj, it's performance, you go and see people performing Hajj, right? The Shahadatain likewise, and Zakat, all are visible. Articles of faith are unseen, right? Al-Imanu billahi wa malaikatihi, right? So all these are matters of faith. So sometimes we accept fantastical narration because it actually gets us into the realm of, you know, almost a dream world. So we need to be very careful that we don't use our faculty that seeks the fantastical news and then we begin to convey it. I say this because today, in the matter of social media, the more fantastical the news, the more you share it. Which often again, it becomes that not only that you're conveying something that is falsehood, but you also, in matters of religion, you are a person that should be the measure of what is truth and what is falsehood. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave that, وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وُسْطًى, a middle nation, لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاء, so you be witnesses. What is the witnesses? Don't think witnesses only going in court. To be a balanced people that actually decipher for the society in these affairs. So fantastical stories, issues that are there, is also for us to recognize. Now, interestingly enough, a French scholar who dealt with issues of, at a moment of crisis in societies, some elements of learned helplessness as well as imposing on oneself a type of incapacity as a citizen. He says, in moments of difficulties, people will be occupied with three things. Getting their sustenance, trying to go and get work and to eat. Second, entertainment. In the context of France, he said soccer, right? And third, that they would be preoccupied with religion in a fantastical way. So religion, rather being the measure of justice and balance of the society, becomes a way to actually escape from what is being asked. Again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ وَإِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى. God commanded to justice. And therefore, religion is to actually go around to manifest justice, both individually and collectively. But because of the crisis, we begin to have religion as an escape. And he says in particular, during that period, people begin to be preoccupied with the actions of religions rather than the meaning of religion. They will be preoccupied with making sure that the particulars of structures, carpet, again, beautiful carpet, right? They look at the mabani and laysa al-ma'ani. They get preoccupied with the structures and the forms rather than the meanings. Right? And again, we see this in general as part of where we are at in relations to our engagement. And you could see in the Muslim world, two countries went to war over a soccer game. Right? Again, a soccer game, people went to war and called their ambassador between Egypt and Algeria over a soccer game. There is a person also in Jordan just recently killed as a result of a soccer game. And we're not talking about what's happening in England and other places, but you could see in here people are taking in here entertainment, one, but the second is in terms of preoccupation with these aspects relative to the forms rather than the content. Now, Ibn Khaldun also speaks about asabiyya. And he is one of the early people to speak about what's asabiyya as a form of nationalism. Right? Some of the scholars, again, look at his writing on asabiyya as the early formation of the idea of having nationalism as a foundation. And he says that in the rise of governance and power, asabiyya is needed, but it has to be remedied or always being balanced with religion that is looking for the best interest of the society. Now, asabiyya, he argues, have won the day over Islam. Because as the early Muslims were trying to be universal, everybody is included, it became asabiyya, a form of Arab proto-nationalism early on, and that became the foundation. And now we have, mashallah, 55 Muslim countries with a nationalism without cooperation. In such a way that we have the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, I call it the Organization of Un-Islamic Cooperation. Because there is no cooperation to the extent that we don't trade with each other. Muslim states, they don't trade with each other. Like 90% of their trade is outside their area. And anyone that knows business, like if you go down to Silicon Valley, everything talk about synergy, right? How we could be synergetic with each other. Our company, your company, we could have mutual relations. Muslim worlds don't have synergy with each other. They would rather go all the way up to Alaska and possibly Siberia to get a product rather than to go next door, which would be there right there with their next door neighbor. And in sometimes two villages that actually just there's a line between them, that's it. They will not talk to them, they would not sell or buy, they would not even have marriage relationship between them. And I had a number of cases, oh, can you advise us because my daughter or my son are going to marry from across the street. All right, Syria to a Palestinian or Egyptian to a Libyan or a Bangladeshi to a Pakistani is like a crisis. Well, 70 years ago, you're all part of the same nation. 200 years ago, you're all part of the same society. You could go from China all the way to Spain, and you're just a Muslim. That's the only thing that you were about. Today, you're just like, well, you need to be 5'4", you need to be this measure, and so on, and you have to be from the particular village. If you're not from the particular village, haram, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, and now we have to go to Dr. Phil to resolve the conflict. Right? So asabiyya has been reduced to such an extent that it's just like it's a calamity. We don't trade with each other, we don't engage with each other, we don't correspond with each other, and that results in learned failure. Learned failure, again, we don't have synergy in business relations. We don't have synergy in any other element. We don't have synergy in terms of marriage relations, especially in this country, right? If your daughter or son are marrying someone from the Muslim, you should just do takbir from here to Judgment Day. You should just like learn how to say takbir, alhamdulillah, especially in the crisis, but to say, no, I want somebody from the same village, and if it's be from the same yellow house like our house, then this is what I want. Like the insanity is just compounded. So this asabiyya has been really our calamity. I do believe Muslims are powerful, but they don't understand their power center. We just don't. We think that it's just like if we just get somebody maybe from, what is it, whatever consulting company to tell us what it is. No, you just need to understand what you have. There's no lack of resources. Muslim lands have plenty of resources. Every ingredient is there. Muslim world is centered on trade routes all across the world. You cannot move right, left, north, south, east, west, up and down. Even if you're going to go to Mars, you have to pass through Muslim territories. Waterways and so on. Talent-wise, again, if you just think about the Muslims in this country, but look at it, we have a wealth of human capacity. I know that say, mashallah, there's 1.4 billion people. If those 1.4 billion are not cooperating, then they're zero. Right? They're zero. Because at the basis of it, cooperation is what makes strength. Yadullahi ma'al jama'ah. That's what Allah said, right? Or the Prophet ﷺ said. Yadullahi ma'al jama'ah. He didn't say Yadullahi ma'al Muslim al-jama'ah. Ma'al jama'ah. People cooperate, and therefore 1.4 billion not cooperating is net effect zero. وَكَمْ مِنْ فِئَةٍ قَلِيلَةٍ غَلَبَتْ فِئَةً كَبِيرَةً بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. A small group can outtake a larger group. Why? Because they know how to cooperate, and therefore there is a net energy value that adds to them. Again, I'm a Palestinian. Again, I work on Palestine. The Jewish Zionist population around the world is less than 1/20th of or 1/100th of the Muslim population. They cooperate, they work together. Again, as a person who's working, I need to understand my opposition to see where they're coming into strength versus us. Lack of cooperation is the cause of our weakness. And for that, we have the Asabiyya, where everybody wants to be a leader. There is nobody follower. All right? So we put 4 of us in one room or 3 of us in one room, we come up with 4 organizations. Each one of us has to be a president of their organization, and then a 4th organization will pretend that we work together. And we say, mashallah, there's a lot of Muslim organizations. But it's, again, it's these 4 of us who are not cooperating. So again, I think visiting and considering Ibn Khaldun's, because he focused on understanding how the society manages, how the society benefits, what are the bases of rising and power relations, not in a bombastic way, but how to actually develop a society that at a certain point was the envy of the world, and now we're not even on the rank, right? They had a survey just last week. What are the most miserable populations in the world? 9 out of 10 are Muslim countries. And then people say, well, we need to do hijrah to the Muslim world. I said, Muslim world are leaving. 95 million immigrants and refugees are on the move. 65% of them are Muslims. And then somebody says, oh, I need to do a hijrah. I'm just asking, like, what are the bases? Because again, you're praying here. Nobody's actually, this person who just did a tweet is 14 years in jail in a Muslim country. Another person who actually was invited just to pray in outside the mosque for a Jum'ah prayer because he prayed in the wrong country, he's in jail for 12 years. You're able to do all your 5 obligations. So I'm really asking the question, hijrah to where? You know, I can understand Elon Musk wants to go to Mars, that's his point, but for us, what is the question they're being asked? So really we need to think in the questions both for us in here and the Muslim world, and to begin to resolve some of these contradictions that we have within ourselves, how we view our religion, how we view our work, how we view other Muslims and the relations in order to have a collective strength. I think we have the ingredients of strength, it's just we have to find ways and compel ourselves to cooperate. And ourselves again, inna nafsa la'ammaratin bisu. So don't say I see it this way. Can you compel yourself to actually see other person idea and embrace it as yours? That's the challenge. Because sometimes if it's not my idea, well, I'm not, you know, he's from the other village, I'm not going to take their idea. Because if I take their idea, their village is going to be ahead of us. MashaAllah. Both your village and his village under occupation, so what are you boasting about? All right? أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه. استغفر الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين به ونستغفره ونتوب إليه وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْمُشْرِكُونَ. So again, I'd like to come up with materials for you that make you think and engage in a higher level, because I think for me the Friday khutbah is for us to share in materials and information that can get us to think and come out after Jum'ah, and hopefully for us to change and alter our perspective. So my challenge for you is to find ways for us to cooperate in every area. Yadullahi ma'al jama'a. We celebrate the Sahaba, right? We look at Medina, Al-Ansar wal-Muhajirin. What happened? They cooperated. They made brotherhood and sisterhood in a way that transformed history. The only time in history where a group that comes destitute from Mecca, again Muhajirin, and the people who receive them give them half of their wealth. There is not a single instance in history that you could point at. That's our example. They cooperated. And through that cooperation, they transformed the world. That's our point of strength. That's what transformed the world. Don't worry about rizq. Your rizq is coming from Allah from the time that your conception in your mother womb. Your rizq is guaranteed to you by Allah when you're in your mother womb. And no soul is going to exhaust its life until it gets its rizq. Now distinguish between rizq and collecting somebody else's rizq. Because many of us work for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, your rizq, but actually all what you work is to give the rizq for your inheritors who are going to go and do with it as you want. You will be asked about it, and also they're just receiving it. So distinguish between rizq and your work for somebody else's rizq. So let's inshallah, make it a commitment for us to cooperate, to transform ourselves both in here and across the world. I do feel that this is within our capacity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put us in this world to fulfill His objective for us, which is to elevate us above the angels. But it is based on cooperation.